The rich cowboy said, "Pretend to be my wife," until one kiss broke his only rule, the twin sons of Kestrel. 9 were low in the sky, casting a burnt orange glow over the desert plains. Dust swirled around the metal remnants of old mining machines, relics of a past era. Out here, on the edge of the Orion frontier, law and order were ideas, not rules. Lila Vance tightened her grip on the controls of her battered hoverbike. The engine hummed, straining against the heat and the weight of her cargo. She hated this planet. Everything was dusty, hot, and full of people who smiled while hiding knives in their boots. She wiped the sweat off her forehead with the back of her hand and muttered, "Just one more delivery, and I'm done." A shadow fell over her path. Lila instinctively slowed, scanning the horizon. That's when she saw him, Ryder Kane. He leaned against a hovering bike almost as big as hers. His duster flapped in the wind, black against the amber sky. The sun glinted off his plasma pistol at his hip. Even at a distance, Lila could tell he wasn't someone you argued with. Ryder Kane was a rich cowboy with a reputation that spanned planets, part industrial magnate, part outlaw, and right now, he was looking straight at her. "You Lila Vance?" he called, his voice calm but with an edge that made the dust swirl faster. Lila's first instinct was to flee, but she kept the bike steady. "Depends on who's asking," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "Ryder Kane," he said, pushing off the bike and walking toward her. He moved with quiet confidence, every step measured. "I have a job." "For you." Lila raised an eyebrow. "A job?" "I'm guessing it pays better than hauling illegal tech through the asteroid belt?" Ryder smirked slightly. "It's different. More dangerous, maybe, and it comes with instructions. You'll have to follow them exactly." Lila sighed. She hated jobs with too many instructions, but something about Ryder made her curious. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, like the world owed him nothing, yet everything feared him. "I'm listening," she said. Ryder's eyes softened just a little, enough to be noticed, but not enough to seem human. "I need you to pretend to be my wife." Lila blinked. "Excuse me?" He didn't smile. He simply explained, "There's an event on New Arcadia, a floating mining city. My rivals will be there. I need someone to appear as my partner. That's all. You don't have to do anything else. Just be my wife for a few days." Lila laughed, a short, sharp sound. "And why would I agree to this?" "Because you need credits," Ryder said, "and protection. And because I can guarantee this is the safest unusual job you'll ever take. And if you refuse, well, you're not in a position to refuse, are you?" The wind gusted again, stirring sand around them. Lila weighed her options. She didn't have much choice. Her last few runs had gone sideways, and she was 3 credits short of paying off a debt she couldn't ignore. Pretending to be a rich cowboy's wife for a few days might actually be the break she needed. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll do it." Ryder's expression didn't change, but his eyes held a quiet approval. "Good. One rule, though," he added. "While you're with me, no personal attachments. Keep it professional." "Professional?" Lila repeated, eyebrows raised. She had a feeling that rule would be hard to follow, but she kept that thought to herself. They mounted their bikes. Ryder's machine roared to life, larger and smoother than hers. Dust rose behind them as they sped toward the outskirts of Kestrel, 9, where his transport ship waited. The journey was tense. Lila tried to focus on the road, but Ryder was unusually quiet, scanning the horizon as if expecting an ambush at any moment. "So, why me?" she asked finally. "There must be dozens of people you could hire for this." Ryder didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his tone was flat. "You have skills. You think fast. You know how to survive." "That's flattering," Lila muttered. "You're also trustworthy. At least, I hope you are." Lila laughed under her breath. "Hope I am? That's comforting." They reached the edge of the desert as the suns began to dip below the horizon. Ryder's ship was massive, a sleek transport vessel with reinforced hulls and glowing thrusters. Lila's eyes widened slightly. She had flown plenty of ships, but nothing like this. As they climbed aboard, Ryder handed her a datapad. "All the details you need are here. Memorize it. Stick to it. Do exactly as I say." "Understood?" Lila nodded. "Understood." The interior of the ship was surprisingly luxurious. The walls pulsed with soft blue lights, and a small holographic interface projected above the central console. Ryder led her to a private cabin and handed her a uniform, a fitted jacket, dark trousers, and boots that looked like they belonged in an old Western movie, only these had subtle energy shields built into the soles. "You'll wear this for the event," he said. "Keep your hair neat, act like a partner, and don't talk too much." "Just follow my lead." Lila held up the jacket, feeling its weight. "This is fancy." "It's supposed to be," Ryder said. "Appearances matter." The rest of the evening passed in careful preparation. Ryder briefed her on the gala, the rival executives attending, and the political stakes of the event. He told her what to say, where to stand, and even how to smile convincingly. Lila tried to focus, but she couldn't ignore the strange mix of charm and danger that clung to Ryder like a second skin. Every time she looked at him, she felt a tension in her chest she didn't understand. She shook it off. This was a job, nothing more. Just as she was about to rest, an alarm blared through the ship. Ryder's hand was on his pistol instantly. "Bounty hunters," he muttered. "They track by signal. We're not out of the desert yet." Lila's heart raced as Ryder guided her to a reinforced cockpit. The engines roared, lifting the ship just as shadowy figures appeared on the horizon, hover bikes glinting in the dying light. "Hold on," Ryder said, his jaw tight. The ship lifted off, skimming just above the dunes. The bounty hunters fired plasma bolts that hissed past the hull. Lila's hands were sweating on the controls, but Ryder's calm presence steadied her. He leaned over, giving her instructions with clipped efficiency. "Twist left, then down, don't slow." The ship dodged, dipped, and twisted, evading the glowing shots. Dust rose in clouds behind them as the hunters lost track. Lila let out a shaky laugh. "I haven't had this much fun in years." Ryder's eyes flicked to her. "Don't get used to it. This isn't fun." Finally, the last of the hunters disappeared over the dunes. The ship hummed as it gained altitude. Lila exhaled, gripping the armrests. "You said this would be safe," she said, a little breathless. Ryder's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Safe is relative, but it's manageable." Lila glanced at him, noticing for the first time the scar along his jaw, the faint tremor in his hand when he relaxed for a moment. She wondered what had made him this way, why a man so powerful, so rich, seemed to carry the weight of the desert on his shoulders. "No time to think about it now," she muttered. Ryder's eyes met hers. There was a silent understanding between them. Dangerous jobs, high-stakes plans, and secrets hidden beneath layers of wealth and power. This was their world. For now they had to survive, play their roles, and trust each other enough to make it through. The suns disappeared behind the horizon, leaving a dark sky sprinkled with stars. New Arcadia waited, and with it, the challenge that would test them both. Lila didn't know it yet, but agreeing to pretend to be Ryder Kane's wife would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. And Ryder Kane's only rule, no attachments, was about to be tested in ways he had never expected. The ship cut through the sky, leaving the desert behind. Lila stared out at the endless expanse, watching as the stars blinked alive above the shadow of New Arcadia. The floating city looked like a jewel hovering above the planet, its neon lights reflecting off the clouds below. Massive mining platforms circled the city like satellites, and ships of all sizes moved along invisible lanes in the sky. "This place is huge," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryder didn't answer immediately. He was scanning a digital map projected above the console, adjusting the ship's course. "It is," he said finally, "and it's dangerous. One wrong move, and people die. Or worse, they disappear." Lila swallowed hard. "That's comforting." Ryder's lips twitched almost a smile. "It's not meant to be comforting. It's reality." When the ship docked at the city's main skyport, the ground seemed to ripple beneath them, a mix of grav lifts and floating platforms. Workers in neon suits bustled around, and hovering taxis zipped through the air, weaving between buildings that gleamed like glass towers and steel skeletons. Lila followed Ryder, trying to look composed while her heart raced. They arrived at a hotel that floated just above one of the city's main mining hubs. Ryder's suite was on the top floor, a luxurious space with holographic windows showing the entire city below. Lila set down her bag and took a deep breath. "Remember the plan," Ryder said, handing her a small datapad. "You are my wife here. Smile, laugh, pretend to know me. Don't overstep, don't draw attention, and above all, do not break my rule." "I know the rule," Lila said, though she couldn't stop a tiny smirk from forming. She already felt the tension in the air between them, and pretending to be someone's wife in this setting seemed like stepping onto a battlefield dressed in silk. Over the next hours, Ryder briefed her on the gala's guests. High-ranking executives, rogue miners, and a few known mercenaries would attend. The entire city seemed to be buzzing with information, alliances, and whispered plots. Lila memorized names, faces, and small details, knowing that one mistake could expose them. "Don't worry," Ryder said when he noticed her frown. "I'll guide you. Just follow my lead." The evening arrived faster than Lila expected. They entered the gala, stepping onto a polished floor that seemed to glow under their feet. Music echoed from a holographic band in the corner. The crowd's chatter was constant, like waves lapping against the hull of a ship. Ryder moved through the room with ease, his presence commanding attention. Lila followed close behind, careful to match his stride. Everywhere they went, eyes turned toward them. People whispered, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Lila felt out of place but tried to blend in. She smiled at the right moments, nodded politely, and answered questions with the precision Ryder had taught her. It was exhausting, but also strangely thrilling. At one point, a woman with a metallic arm extended her hand toward Ryder. "Ryder Kane," she said, her voice smooth. "And this must be your wife?" Lila forced a polite smile. "Yes, I'm Lila," she said. Ryder's eyes flicked to her briefly, a silent warning not to slip up. She nodded subtly. The woman smiled, and they moved on. Lila realized that in this place appearances were everything. One small misstep, one wrong word, and they could be targets. As the night went on, Lila began to notice small things. Secret glances between guests, subtle hand signals, and even a few people taking discreet notes. It wasn't just a gala, it was a game of information. "You see that man?" Ryder said quietly, nodding toward a tall figure in a dark suit. "He works for a syndicate trying to take over parts of my empire. Keep an eye on him." Lila nodded. "Got it." Despite the danger, there were moments of levity. When a waiter tripped and nearly dropped a tray of drinks, Ryder caught it with a calm flick of his wrist. Lila couldn't help laughing quietly. He shot her a quick glance, and for a moment the air between them felt lighter. After a few hours, they stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city. The neon lights reflected in the clouds below, and the stars above were clearer than anywhere Lila had seen. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. Ryder didn't answer immediately. He was scanning the crowd below, his face unreadable. Finally, he said, "It's dangerous. Don't let the lights fool you." Lila frowned. "Everything is dangerous with you, isn't it?" He turned to her, his eyes catching the neon glow. I prefer to be cautious. Surviving is better than dying in a pretty place." They stayed on the balcony for a few minutes, the wind brushing against their faces. Lila felt a strange connection, an understanding that went beyond words. They were partners in a game of survival, but the line between pretense and reality was beginning to blur. Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the main hall. Lila and Ryder rushed inside to see a man trying to sneak past security with a concealed weapon. Ryder moved instantly, blocking the man's path. Lila watched in awe as he disarmed him with a combination of quick reflexes and authority that left the crowd frozen. "Stay close," Ryder whispered as they moved away from the scene. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but Lila couldn't shake the feeling that danger was always near. She noticed subtle signals in Ryder's posture, the way his eyes constantly scanned the crowd. She realized that pretending to be his wife was not just about appearances, it was about trust, instinct, and survival. Later, back in their suite, Lila sat on the balcony staring at the city below. Ryder joined her, leaning against the railing. For a moment, they didn't speak. "You did well tonight," he said finally. Lila shrugged. "I followed instructions," he smiled faintly. "More than that, you adapted." "That's rare." She looked at him, noticing the faint scar along his jaw in the soft neon light. "Why do you have that scar?" she asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Ryder's expression darkened. "Old business. Not important." "Everything's important if it tells a story," Lila said softly. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe, but some stories are best left untold." The silence stretched between them, comfortable yet tense. Lila realized that despite the pretense, she was beginning to understand Ryder, his caution, his rules, and the walls he'd built around himself. As the night deepened, a small alert blinked on Ryder's datapad. He frowned, scanning the information. "We might have company," he muttered. "What kind?" Lila asked, rising to her feet. An assassin, he said. They're trying to make a statement. If they find us, it won't be friendly. Lila's heart raced. She had expected danger, but now it felt very real. She glanced at Ryder, noticing the calm efficiency in his movements. He wasn't just rich or powerful. He was prepared for everything. Are we going to survive? She asked, half joking, half serious. Ryder's lips curved into a small, sharp smile. We'll survive if we stick together. And follow the rules. Lila nodded. The rules, she realized, were not just about pretending to be his wife. They were about trust, strategy, and keeping each other alive. The night ended with them standing on the balcony again, watching the city glow under the twin suns' afterlight. Lila felt a mix of excitement and fear, realizing that her life had changed. Pretending to be someone's wife on a floating city wasn't just a job, it was a test, and the game was only beginning. The gala had barely ended when chaos erupted. A man in a black cloak darted across the floor, aiming a plasma pistol at Ryder. Guests screamed and scattered, their glittering outfits flashing under neon lights. "Get down!" Ryder shouted, grabbing Lila's arm. They dove behind a reinforced table, plasma bolts sizzling over their heads. Lila's heart pounded in her chest. This was no longer pretending. This was real danger. Ryder peered around the edge of the table, scanning the room. We need to move. Now. She trusted him completely, even though the chaos made her stomach twist. Ryder pulled a small device from his belt. With a press, the balcony door slid open, revealing a gravity lift leading down to the mining platforms below. "Follow me," he said. They raced across the balcony. Guests screamed and stumbled, some freezing in fear, others trying to run. Lila kept close, letting Ryder's calm confidence guide her. He moved with fluid precision, each step measured, each motion calculated. She had never seen anyone so steady in the face of danger. Once on the gravity lift, Ryder pressed a few buttons, and they descended rapidly. Lila's stomach flipped as the city lights blurred past. When they reached the bottom, the assassin was nowhere in sight. "Think he'll follow us?" Lila asked, catching her breath. Ryder shook his head. "Not here. Too crowded. But he won't give up. He'll wait." The streets of New Arcadia were no safer. They moved quickly, weaving through neon-lit alleys and crowded marketplaces. Lila kept her senses sharp. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every passerby could be watching. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the outskirts," Ryder said. "I have a transport ready. We leave the city and head into the desert. That's where they'll have the least advantage." As they ran, Lila couldn't help but notice the small details she'd missed before. The way the city hummed with energy, the glimmer of robotic vendors, the faint hum of grav lifts above. It was beautiful, almost magical, but she had no time to admire it. Finally, they reached the hangar. Ryder's transport ship waited, engines humming softly. They climbed aboard and Ryder immediately took the controls. Lila sat beside him, gripping the edge of the console. "Ready for a high-speed chase?" he asked, his tone almost casual. "Not really," Lila admitted, though part of her felt a thrill she hadn't expected. The ship lifted off just as a group of cloaked figures appeared on the platform below, firing plasma pistols. Ryder maneuvered with skill, dodging bolts and weaving between support beams. Lila's stomach flipped again and again, but she couldn't stop smiling despite herself. "You handle the weapons," Ryder shouted, tossing her a compact energy rifle. Lila hesitated, then took it. The controls were heavier than she expected, but she aimed carefully, firing at the drones chasing them. Sparks flew as shots hit, sending small explosions across the hangar. Ryder glanced at her. "Good shot," he said. They sped into the open desert, the city shrinking behind them. Dust rose in clouds as the transport's engines kicked up sand. Ryder didn't speak much, only issuing quick instructions. Lila followed, her adrenaline keeping her focused. Hours passed as they raced across the barren landscape. The twin suns were now just a faint glow on the horizon. Lila finally allowed herself a breath, lowering the rifle.
"You're really calm?"
she said, breaking the silence. Ryder glanced at her. "Calm keeps us alive. Panic gets people killed." She nodded, understanding for the first time that this wasn't arrogance. This was experience. This was survival. They paused at a hidden canyon where Ryder had left a camouflaged mech horse. The machines were designed for desert travel, able to carry them faster and farther than the ship could safely go. Ryder activated the mech, and the metal horse whirred to life. Lila mounted hers, gripping the controls. "Hold on tight," Ryder said. They galloped across the desert, kicking up sand and massive clouds. The stars began to appear overhead, twinkling like diamonds scattered across black velvet. It was beautiful, serene even, but the danger wasn't gone. Sensors on Ryder's belt beeped constantly, warning of approaching threats. Hours into their escape, one of the assassin's drones appeared on the horizon, glowing red in the darkness. Ryder's expression hardened. Here they come. Stay close. The chase was relentless. Lila's heart pounded and sweat ran down her face. But something strange happened. She no longer felt afraid. She felt alive, and she felt connected to Ryder in a way she couldn't explain. Every movement he made seemed to protect her, and every glance felt like it carried unspoken meaning. The drone fired a plasma bolt directly at them. Ryder swerved his mech horse sharply, but the bolt grazed the side of Lila's mech, sending her stumbling. Ryder reacted instantly, leaping off his horse and pushing her to safety. They crashed to the ground, sand flying. Lila's heart raced. "Thanks," she said, looking up at him. Ryder didn't answer immediately. He helped her to her feet, brushing sand from her jacket. For a moment they were close. Their eyes met, and Lila felt something stir inside her chest. Without thinking, Ryder leaned forward and pressed a quick, sharp kiss to her lips. It was instinctive, protective, and brief, but it sent a shock through both of them. Lila stepped back, wide-eyed. Ryder's eyes were dark, conflicted. I shouldn't have," he said, his voice low. Lila shook her head, her own emotions swirling. "You didn't have to." They mounted their mechs again, but the moment lingered in the air, unspoken and undeniable. Ryder had broken his rule, the one he had sworn would keep him from attachments. And now both of them knew things had changed. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but the chase wasn't over. Another drone appeared, this one larger and faster. Ryder kicked his mech into overdrive, weaving between rocks and ridges. Lila followed, firing at the drone when necessary. They reached a narrow canyon, the walls close on either side. Ryder led the way, using his knowledge of the terrain to create an advantage. The drone followed, its sensors pinging. Lila's hands were steady, her breathing even. She had never felt so alive, so aware of the present. Ryder took a sharp turn, and the drone crashed into the canyon wall, sparks flying. They had survived. For now. They paused to catch their breath, leaning against their mechs. Lila's chest heaved from the exertion, her hands trembling slightly. Ryder's eyes softened as he looked at her. "You're brave," he said quietly. "You taught me well," she replied. The tension between them had changed. They were no longer just pretending. The kiss, brief as it was, had shifted everything. Ryder's rule had been broken, and neither of them could ignore the new reality. As they continued their journey through the desert, Lila realized that this adventure, this dangerous, thrilling, terrifying adventure, had made her feel more alive than she ever had. And she knew, deep down, that she could trust Ryder, not just as a partner for the night, but as someone who might matter more than anyone she had ever known. The twin suns had set completely now, leaving only stars and the faint glow of distant cities. But even in the darkness there was a spark between them, unspoken, dangerous, and undeniable. Lila glanced at Ryder, and for the first time she allowed herself to hope. Hope that they could survive the desert. Hope that they could survive the challenges ahead, and maybe a hope that what had started as a game could become something real. They rode on, the desert stretching endlessly before them, and somewhere beyond the horizon their greatest test awaited. The desert stretched endlessly around them, the cold night air biting through their jackets. Ryder Kane and Lila Vance had survived the assassination attempt and the relentless pursuit through New Arcadia and the barren wastelands, but the danger was far from over. Ryder guided their mech horses toward a hidden canyon where a rebel outpost awaited. It was a massive, hollowed-out asteroid, partially buried in sand, converted into a fortress with energy shields and makeshift gravity wells. Rebels had fought the Syndicate before and had agreed to provide refuge and reinforcements for those willing to stand against the enemy. As they approached, Lila studied the fortress. Its angular walls reflected the pale light of distant stars, and plasma turrets rotated silently on the perimeter. "This place looks serious," she said, gripping the controls of her mech horse. Ryder's eyes scanned the horizon. "It is, and it's our best shot." Inside the asteroid, the rebels were waiting. Their leader, a tall woman with cybernetic arms named Kayla, stepped forward. "Ryder Kane," she said, her voice firm. "And you brought the smuggler?" "Yes," Ryder said. "She's proven herself, and we need all the help we can get. The Syndicate is moving fast. They won't wait." Kayla's eyes flicked to Lila. Then let's make sure they regret it. For the next hour, they prepared. Weapons were checked, turrets calibrated, and plans outlined. Lila worked alongside the rebels, using her knowledge of smuggling routes and tech tricks to hack the Syndicate's drones before they could reach the asteroid. Ryder coordinated defenses, mapping out the best strategies to minimize casualties. The calm before the storm was tense. Lila could feel her heart racing, and even Ryder seemed focused in a way that made him even more formidable. They shared a look, unspoken acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Pretend or not, they'd become partners in every sense. As the first Syndicate drones appeared on the radar, Ryder whispered, "Stay sharp." The attack began. Plasma bolts streaked through the asteroid's corridors, alarms blaring. Lila fired at incoming drones with precision, taking out one after another. Ryder moved through the chaos like a shadow, disarming traps, protecting rebels, and giving commands with cool efficiency. At one point, a Syndicate operative broke through a side entrance, aiming a weapon directly at Lila.
Ryder was faster. He dove in front of her, blocking the shot with his body.
The plasma bolt hit his armor, sending sparks flying. Lila's hands shook, but she didn't falter. She fired back, neutralizing the threat. Ryder's chest rose and fell, but he gave her a nod. "Well done," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. Hours passed as they fought their way deeper into the asteroid, tracking the Syndicate's leader, a man named Varen. He had personal grudges against Ryder and had engineered the initial assassination attempts. Now he was cornered, desperate, and dangerous. They found him in the control room, a large space filled with glowing consoles and a holographic map of the galaxy. "Kane," Varen sneered. "And the smuggler? Thought you could escape me?" Ryder's jaw tightened. "This ends tonight." The fight was brutal but precise. Varen fired at them from behind the consoles, but Lila and Ryder moved in sync. She hacked the security systems, cutting off his escape routes, while Ryder dodged and returned fire with measured precision. Every move was calculated, every step a dance of life and death. Finally, Varen made a desperate move, charging at Ryder with a plasma sword. Ryder sidestepped, grabbing Varen's arm and twisting it until the weapon clattered to the floor. Lila didn't hesitate, using a stun baton to immobilize him. Varen struggled, but the combined effort of Ryder and Lila left him defeated. Breathing heavily, Ryder turned to Lila. "We did it," he said. She smiled, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We make a good team." Ryder looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't hide his feelings. He stepped closer. "More than a team," he said quietly. I broke my rule. I can't keep pretending anymore." Lila's heart skipped. She had felt it too. The bond, the connection, the sparks that had ignited during the chase, the kiss in the desert. "You don't have to explain," she said softly. He shook his head, eyes locked on hers. "I need to see." "I never have, but you're different." She reached out, touching his hand lightly. "I feel the same. Maybe we're allowed to break rules sometimes." The moment stretched between them, tender and real. Neither had pretended in that instant. Ryder leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her, not out of necessity or instinct, but because it was real, because it was theirs. Behind them, the rebel forces began securing the asteroid. Systems were rebooted, drones deactivated, and Varen was taken into custody. Ryder and Lila finally allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Kayla approached, a faint smile on her face. "You two might actually survive this," she said. "Not bad for a cowboy and a smuggler." Ryder chuckled softly, glancing at Lila. "We survived because we trusted each other." Lila smiled back. "And because we broke a few rules." The night sky stretched outside the asteroid, stars twinkling like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The twin suns would rise soon, bringing light to the desert wasteland. But for now, there was peace, a calm they had earned with sweat, strategy, and courage. Ryder turned to Lila. "You'll stay with me," he said. "Not as a job, not as a pretense, but as something real." "I will," Lila said, her smile warm. They stood together on a balcony overlooking the desert, the neon glow of distant New Arcadia lights fading in the distance. The dangers had passed, the rules had changed, and their partnership, both professional and personal, had begun. For the first time, Ryder Kane allowed himself to feel more than caution. For the first time, he allowed trust and perhaps even love to grow. And Lila? She had found something she never expected. Not just adventure and survival, but a connection that made the twin sons of the desert feel brighter than ever before. The universe was vast, full of danger and intrigue, but together they knew they could face it all. And as they looked out over the endless sands and distant city lights, one thing was clear. Rules were made to be broken, hearts were made to be trusted, and adventures were best shared. The stars blinked overhead, silent witnesses to a new beginning. Ryder held Lila's hand, the warmth grounding him after the chaos of the last days. "No more pretending," he said quietly. "Never again," Lila agreed, leaning into him. And for the first time in a long while, Ryder Kane smiled. Truly smiled, because the future was uncertain, the universe vast, and yet for the first time he didn't have to face it alone. The twin suns rose, painting the desert gold, and somewhere beyond the horizon, new adventures awaited. But tonight, they were together.